This is some dirty used carpet, which I use as an edge retention comparison between a few steels. Specifically, I wanted to look at the relative difference between low and high carbide steels with an extra coarse apex finish of 15 degrees per side. So I start off with 12C27, which is a razor blade steel similar to AEBL, and 13C26. I intended initially to do a very rough comparison, so I was just going to cut the carpet until I couldn't cut it anymore, and then use the number of slices to give me sort of a rough guideline to develop constraints for a future experiment. However, the first knife just never stopped cutting the carpet. After 1,000 slices, I could still easily make a strip between 10 to 20 slices. At that point, I decided I needed to take a break and stop, because if I didn't, I was going to quickly run through all my carpet with the same steel. So I had to leave enough so that I could at least use the other two steels that I was planning on at least once to get a rough guideline. So this is after 1,000 slices. Again, this is 12C27, a very basic low carbide steel in a relatively inexpensive knife. It easily slices up some light plastics, easily cuts up some very thin polypropylene rope. Yes, this is taking a bit more force. When this knife is sharp, it'll do this with just a few pounds. Now it's taking, a bit of effort. And cuts up some garden hose, no problem. I then take out the wood as a source of amusement, and I want to see, this is again way beyond shaving sharp at this point, can I get some fine shavings? And I can. The issue is mainly that I had to increase the angle of the blade to the wood significantly, otherwise it's just going to skip along it. So there's a little bit of a technique issue to play with here. This is what the apex looks like. This is 1 millimeter of the apex, and you can see that it's worn rather smooth. There's only very, very light chipping, but it's mainly wear and not even a lot of extensive deformation. So I switched to the second knife. This is an S30V blade. It's a SouthFork from Phil Wilson. It's one of his earlier SouthForks in S30V. This was personally hardness tested by Phil at 60 Rockwell. And one of the things which strikes me right away is that I would use this knife over the Normark EKA even if it had only a fraction of the edge retention, which it doesn't. But the increase in handle ergonomics is night and day, and the extra blade length allows me to make strips with fewer slices. Now, I'm actually just counting slices here, so it doesn't matter if I take 5 or 10, but functionally the difference in these two knives is striking, and that's one of the things that people don't often talk about with Phil's work, because they focus on a thing like he uses relatively high carbide steels and he grinds very thin, both of which are, non-trivial, but he does a lot of other work which raises the performance of these knives in general as functional tools, so that this one stands out to me as a solid working knife. And I do a few hard cuts right here, again, just as a point of comparison to check and see the massive difference in handle comfort and ergonomics. And I'm mainly playing around here with it on the wood, trying to again figure out how to adapt to the using this apex on this, which is rather dull at this stage, and still try to get these few fine shavings. And it's mainly coming out that I had to do an exaggerated draw at a slightly higher angle to prevent the blade from skipping and to allow a nice thin shaving, but it can be done. This is the apex, and again this is 1 millimeter. You can see, in contrast to the 12C27, which is not surprising, it's wearing by fracture and chips. So let's bump this up a notch. This is a 10V blade from Spyderco. It's a collaboration between Spyderco and Mehr. It's the K2. 10V is one of the most abrasion resistant steels on the market being used in cutlery. In order to exceed it, you have to go to materials which are on the borderline of steels, like 121 Rex. Again, I do another 1,000 slices. It's still easily cutting carpet. and then I move on to doing some functional checks for sharpness, cuts the garden hose, cuts light plastic, cuts the polypropylene rope, and by this time I got the technique down for slicing wood with a dull blade, and I'm easily able to make relatively fine shavings. This is the edge. Interestingly enough, it shows less chipping than the S30V, but significantly more than the 12C27. A bit of a discussion about that extended in the actual discussion box below. As a point of immediate comparison, the big picture in the middle is the 12C27, top left hand is S30V, and bottom right hand is 10V.